Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. All right, I'm taking a virtual road trip today. My guest, whom I've never met, is down in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here in Cincinnati, and we're just going to take a short drive. I found his story very interesting. His name is Joe Edlhuber. Was a school teacher, he told me, and today, though, he is part of a company called Park Hats. And I stumbled across Park Hats several years ago and bought one of their hats and just found it to be a really cool little company. And I'm anxious to hear from Joe about cars and road trips and national parks and hats and how that's going. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm a race fan, Joe. Hey, well, let's take a warm-up lap around one of my favorite racetracks and take a couple of minutes and just tell my listeners real quickly, who is Joe Edlhuber?
Well, side note, I'm also a race fan. Grew up watching my mom's cousin do a small asphalt track up in Wisconsin, but down here in Georgia, we have clay track. Have you ever seen a clay track race?
I have. It's fun to know you're a race fan, so that's great.
But yeah, like you said, I live just outside of Atlanta. I live kind of in the foothills of the Smokies up in North Georgia. Love being here. Watching the sunset right now through the windows, pretty great.
Are you from Atlanta area originally or no?
No, I'm from Wisconsin originally, and that's where kind of Park Hat based out of loosely. I moved down in 2008 my wife and I were dating, or my now wife and I were dating long distance. Okay. I've been down here since 2000.
As you know, this is Dan, the road trip guy, and I will get to Park Hats a little later and what else you're up to. But I love to start my show with, tell me about your first car.
I'm excited to share about it. It was a beautiful thing. It was a 1991 GEO Tracker.
Oh, boy.
So it was amazing. My mom and dad had a deal when I turned 16. They would pay for half of any car that I wanted. Well, my dreams of getting like a Mustang or something, like a real car dwindled quickly when I realized I had to pay the other half. We ended up with family friend had a GEO Tracker. It was rusted literally everywhere, but it had 4-wheel drive. I could go kind of off-roading with it on a buddy's farm and honestly loved it. It was the best first car ever.
Now, remind me, some of those were convertibles, I think. Was yours soft?
No. So sadly, somehow I managed to get a non-soft top one. So
okay.
It was kind of a bummer.
And how long did you keep that car?
I think we probably had it for 2 years. I think the story was like one of the first times my sister took it out, somehow the wiring harness shorted out. It was dead. It was kind of beyond repair when that happened. It kind of went down in epic glory. But I still love it. I wish I could have thought about getting one again because I just think it was such a fun car to have.
Well, I usually ask my guests, you wish you'd have kept that car? And, a lot of people think that they'd like to have it back.
Oh, man, I would take it back in a heartbeat. Although it leaked oil terribly. And I remember my girlfriend in high school, her dad asked me, after probably the second or third time that I visited their house to not park in their driveway anymore. And I needed to park down at the street because he didn't like the oil stains in his driveway. I think I'd probably try to get that fixed.
Yeah, there you go. You're an avid outdoorsman. I know that. And you sell hats about national parks. So I'm assuming you've taken some road trips in your life. Any road trips that just stick out to you that's just a road trip, if you could go on it today, you'd go again?
Like you said, I was a former teacher. One of the best perks of being a teacher is to get your summers off. In 2010, we took a pretty epic road trip out west. We did 7 different national parks.
Oh, wow.
In that road trip. But I was looking back on it, I realized the first day that we did on that road trip, we drove from Atlanta all the way to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is 1,400 miles.
Oh, one day.
And so that was, it was pretty fun. It was me, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my wife.
Okay.
My father-in-law, we heated like biscuits on the, in the engine compartment. We ate them outside of Talladega. That road trip was so much fun. Like I said, we hit 7 national parks. I think the first one we did was the Grand Canyon. Then we went on from there and then drove back, obviously. But I think we were gone 18 days or 19 days.
Oh, fun.
That was
What'd you
pretty great.
drive?
My father-in-law had just bought an older Toyota Sequoia for the
Okay.
trip. I mean, it was a perfect car for it because we loaded the trunk down with all of our camping gear, and it was really comfortable. But it didn't have DVD player or nothing. And I think we just talked the whole time and listened to a few books on tape. Looked out the window a lot.
Was there a favorite stop on that trip in one of those parks that you just recall very well?
Yeah, I mean, have you ever been to Yosemite?
Have, yes.
I think the first time, you drive through the tunnel to see the valley for the first time. I cried for real, because it's so overwhelming. Can't imagine a place being that beautiful. I think, we were probably sleep deprived a little bit because I think we slept at the Grand Canyon prior to that, and it was snowing and got cold. But so Yosemite was, just epic. It lived up to every bit of hype that it could. But I think my favorite place on that trip was Sequoia. Have you been to Sequoia?
I have.
I think Sequoia, there's a rule kind of in like the 80-20 rule, and it applies to all sorts of stuff. Like 80% stuff that gets done is actually done by 20% of the people, or, however you want to think about 80-20 rule. Well, my 80-20 rule for national parks is 80% of the people only see 20% of the things. They hit all the top attractions that you need to see in national parks, but that means 80% of the park is only left to the other 20% people.
Yeah,
20% of the people. Sequoia, we hiked on some of the John Muir Trail. No one was there, and it felt like we had Sequoia all to ourselves. I look back on some of the pictures, and it's just us wandering around, a giant grove of sequoias. I remember we didn't see anyone for like an hour at one point, and we were hiking, and just to think that was possible is kind of great.
Yeah, my wife and I kind of had that same experience there were crowded parts of Glacier when we went through there, but then we came to this one spot and it just felt like we were out in the middle of nowhere all by ourselves.
Yeah, I just got back from Acadia with my family. I have a wife, 3 kids. Our youngest is 1.
Okay.
That's a different story for a different day. He was a trooper. We kind of felt the same thing in Acadia. We ended up in an unmarked beat. It was a little pull off on the side of the loop trail that they have in Acadia, or loop road. We ended up, we had this beach all to ourselves, and it was just as beautiful as any other part of the park. It just wasn't on everyone's travel blog, top 10 places to see in Acadia. No one else went there. We all kind of came back and said, man, that little beach was the best spot we went that whole week.
Well, we've talked about cars and road trips, and you told me earlier that you're a teacher, but you've kind of stepped away from the classroom now. You've got another day job, but I'm really interested to hear about Park Hats and that little company and where that came from, how that started, and just whatever you can tell me about it, because I've just always been kind of intrigued.
After our large road trip, Will, my brother-in-law, he's pretty artistic. He does almost all of the art on all of our hats. For Christmas one year, he found a company online that would embroider an image on a hat for you. He got me a hat of sequoias, my tent in sequoias, a picture that we had. And so he gave that to me for Christmas one year. I think the artistic side of him viewed that and said, well, I could do a lot better than that. He started experimenting with different patches and different hats, most good little small business stories. We were sitting around the living room one day trying to come up with a company. I think, kind of like we were on GoDaddy searching domain names for, what was available, and Park Hats was available. Started it, and I was kind of always in the background to support. Early on, it was Will, and his mom, so my mother-in-law, did a lot of kind of running around. They weren't selling a ton of hats back then, but it was just people that loved national parks and wanted a little memory. They're on his little store. But then in 2019, Will moved down to South America, and I I took over full time and I brought my sister in. My sister Erin is up in northern Wisconsin. She hand sews all our patches onto hats and ships them out. She lives a little bit of a homestead life, so it's a great little side job for her, that world. And I also brought my best friend from high school in, Ricky. Ricky kind of manages more of our website, ads, that kind of stuff. If anybody's seen a park hat ad, you can blame Ricky.
Okay. Now, is Will still involved from an artistic side, or do you do that?
Yeah, so he's pretty busy. He runs a big farm down in South America right now.
Okay.
But he still has his fingers in. I think, he's got a lot of pride because of his brainchild initially, and he's really, really proud of where we've been able to take it. For him, it was always more of a hobby. It wasn't really like a business or something like that. He just really loved the idea of, being able to put it all together. But yeah, so Will, when I get him too, that's why we haven't had many new parks launched lately, is because Will moved away and I need a new artist.
I see. Yeah, right.
If any listeners out there want to help design some artwork, let me know.
Is it only national parks? I haven't looked that close. Back when I bought one, it was just national parks. But do you do?
Yeah, that's mainly what we focus on. We do some we do a lot of custom stuff. One of our biggest custom companies, it's kind of a national park. I think it's run by the National Park Service, is out in Assateague.
Okay.
They're out of Maryland. It's a national seashore, I believe, is what it's considered. They have wild horses. We do a lot of their hats. We also, hopefully we'll get in. We have stateparkhats.com as well, but we haven't done anything with that. So,
okay.
Yeah, we kind of do all sorts of stuff, but national parks is our main focus.
Is there one particular park that sells better than another park?
Will started, we kind of did the simple math. I think we went to Wikipedia and just said, we're going to do all the popular parks first. Smokey does really well, but Great Smokey Mountain National Park, they have like 14 million visitors a year. Smokey's probably our number one seller.
Okay.
We have our biggest footprint with Acadia, actually. Acadia is, it's well trafficked, but I think we're in like 8 stores in Acadia, which is kind of fun. So when I visited, to be able to go see our stuff in little stores was really fun.
So what was the first hat? Which part?
I believe, aside from my Sequoia one, which I still have,
right,
I have the original.
Yeah. You've got number one, serial number one.
I do. I have Park Hat number 1, and I'm really proud of it. Remember, Smokey and Rocky were up there, and then Arches was another one. Our Arches patch is really cool. That was one that he was really proud of. And then you said Glacier. Glacier was like our first fun patch. It's really colorful and kind of fun. So that was his first experiment in something a little more wild.
And not only do you sell hats, but I believe you sell just the patches. Is that correct?
Patches. Magnets are hard. So we get a lot of people that buy patches and just sew them on the backpacks, or, they might sew them on their own hats. I don't know. So,
yeah, it's kind of like having a piece of luggage that you put all the stickers on where you've been. So just put them on your sleeping bag or backpack, right? So you were a school teacher. What did you teach?
I started basically just 6th grade science was what I taught for a long time, which is fun. It was geology. I would say 6th graders are the best. A lot of people look at me sideways when I said I taught middle school, but it was great. So geology's, I just was teaching kids about the rock cycle and the water cycle all day. So I was having fun. It was great. And then I kind of ended up teaching a lot of robotics and coding, taught a makerspace class as well. So
okay.
But it was just a lot of fun, being able to work with kids every day and, watching them be creative was great.
And you told me you kind of stepped away from the classroom and you are continuing in the robotic area.
I work for Vex Robotics. That's my, 9 to 5, as I call it. We do educational robotics. We do robotics competitions for kids. A lot of people, have you ever watched BattleBots or Robot Wars or something on Discovery Channel?
Yes, I've seen that.
So we do like that kind of stuff for kids, but they don't like demolish each other's robots. But their kids are building robots and they have different games that they're playing. It's fun. I mean, that space is unreal. I think we had a world championship in April and May, and we had kids from, I think the number this year is 43 countries came to Worlds, which
Wow.
I find fascinating. Like what else do you, or where else can you get aside from the Olympics or something like that? That many countries represented in one area where the cool part is they're all working together for the most part. I mean, they are competing against each other, but they also get paired up with random teams. It's really satisfying to watch kids kind of, be their best.
You've been a lot of places. You've taken some road trips. What's on your bucket list? Something you want to do?
One thing I said, I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm getting old. For my 40th birthday, I've had this on my bucket list since I turned 30 because I couldn't afford to do it when I turned 30.
Okay.
Was to go on an Alaskan cruise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Have you ever done that?
Have not done that. It's on our bucket list also.
Well, I've never been on a cruise, period. I'm from Wisconsin. I love the cold. I really have kind of just thought how great it would be. And I've heard that a cruise is the best way to see Alaska initially because you can actually see different parts of it, even if you're on a cruise boat with, 4,000 other people or whatever. I just think it would be great. Wake up every morning, see a mountain range and snow glaciers everywhere.
I want to drive to Alaska at some point, but we'll get there someday.
That's a haul. We spent a lot of time kind of up in like the Pacific Northwest. I feel like you get a taste of it with some of those mountains up there. But then we went to Banff. Have you ever been to Banff, Canada? It's kind of
No,
British Columbia.
No, I've never been across the Canadian border out west. I've just been out here up to Toronto.
I remember the first, because in Banff you can actually like walk on a glacier, and so that was kind of crazy to like think about. But yeah, Alaskan cruise is my hot bucket list. What would do you have anything else on your bucket list aside from?
A lot of stuff there. I still want to go back to Europe and watch a Formula One race, maybe in Italy. Saw some of those. I just posted a podcast about visiting with my brother 44 years ago, and we went to the British Grand Prix. And so I want to do that. And then I have this crazy idea of my wife and I driving all 48 states for sure. I would like to go ahead and do Alaska. And I've mapped out this road trip where you touch every state. We're going to need a bit of time for that one, but that's on my list. We've done a road trip. We did a 4,400-mile road trip out west from Denver, and we made what looked like a lap up the coast to Portland, and then over to Glacier, and then down to Yellowstone and the Tetons, and back to Denver. So that was fun.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think when our kids are a little bit older, my wife has this grand vision, renting an RV and doing that. My kids love camping, so they're all about it. Emmett, my son, asks all the time, when can we go in a camper? Because we have a little pole behind Papa.
Sure.
He's like, when can we go in a camper where you drive? And he's talking about an RV. And I was like, well, a few more years, buddy. I think that'll be in our future at some point.
Hey, here's a question for you on a road trip. If you could take a road trip with anyone who's living or deceased, who would it be? What would you drive? Maybe that GEO Tracker. Where would you go? What would you talk about?
Yeah. The first person that comes to mind kind of hints at your road trip idea. My grandfather, so my mom's dad, he was an avid traveler. He visited all 50 states. He's passed away. I think he passed away probably about 20 years ago.
Okay.
But he loved to travel. He snuck down to Cuba when couldn't. He said he was going on business, but he told me later on he just wanted to visit, so he came up with an excuse to get down there. I would love to travel with him, kind of as an adult. As kids, you kind of get, maybe this isn't the correct terminology, but you kind of get pawned off on grandparents sometimes. Mom and dad have to work, and grandma and grandpa are babysitting. I have so many fond memories. He used to drive giant Lincoln Town Car.
Okay.
In his later years, he decided he was doing leases, but only for a single year. Okay. And then he would go turn it in and get a new lease. But he told me, he was like, well, I never have to do an oil change. I never worry about anything. I just drive it for a year, turn it in, and get a new one. And he loved cars, but he had like 3 or 4 of those giant Lincoln Town Cars in a row. And as a little kid, not much was cooler than sitting in the back seat of one of those things. So
absolutely. Yeah. My dad had one of those, and my son He loved that car. Yeah, so that'd be a good road trip car, drive around.
Yeah, he was a character. He's got a couple sayings that stick with me. He always used to say, "Stop signs are for tourists." When we were just driving around town, which now as an adult, I'm like, Grandpa, that probably wasn't very safe, you know. But he said that a lot. That was probably like the best. But he always used to have this saying anytime, we'd be going on an on-ramp onto the interstate or something. He always gave this like, away we go type little call. I think just to keep it interesting for me in the back seat.
Yeah.
But now I do that with my own kids sometimes,
Fun.
And they want me to drive fast, getting onto the highway or something. And I kind of give that same, away we go.
Yeah, that's great.
Call. That comes from him. Do you have anyone that you would drive with?
Oh, gosh. I made a road trip with my dad. He was 73, 20 years ago, actually, coming up this month. I bought a car, and I've said this on the podcast, so listeners probably get tired of hearing this story, but it just comes back to mind. Bought this little car in San Jose. Car was 20 years old, little BMW. And the only reason to buy it, we were going to drive it back across Route 50, back roads. And he was a truck driver. And we just had the best trip. It was pre cell phone where you would turn on the recorder. So I was always upset with myself that I didn't have a recorder. There's a lot of people I would love to ride with, but if I could go right now, I would go with him and listen to all those stories again about all of his travels in the truck. That would be fun. Thanks for asking.
That sounds great.
We're about to the end of our virtual road trip here, and I really thank you for doing this. And I know we don't know each other, but I feel like I know you a little better now.
Yeah.
I love to give my guest an opportunity to promote a business or a charity or whatever it is they might want to promote. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. So you can find us at parkcats.com. That's probably the easiest place. We'd love to do something for your listeners. So if they use the promo code or coupon road trip, they can get % off their order. We'll have free shipping and everything. What I love about Parkcats is I feel like when people get one, most of the time it's because they had a memory, right? Like they have a memory of going to a national park. They just kind of want to hang on to that. Kind of like we were talking about with all of our road trips. But yeah, I'd love that. If we could help them keep a memory going for a little bit longer. Sometimes some of those trips to national parks, they take so much time and effort that you can't just do it every year. You can't go back. That's why it's fun to have a memory.
And according to your website, you give back also, I believe.
We try to partner with like smaller organizations kind of outside different parks. A lot of times they have like a friends of, the Smokies or one of those things. We try to find organizations that trying to help give back and promote that park or that community that's around the park. If anybody listening has, some good organizations out there that are doing good outside of national parks, we'd love learning about them and helping them invest in the community that they're already a part of.
Well, thank you again, Joe, for taking a little time here this evening and coming on Dan the Road Trip Guy. And we'll just tell people to go visit a national park and buy a park hat.
Yeah, please do. Go visit. Don't go in the summer unless you are crazy. But go. I was joking. There's a reason why the government said, hey, we'll take this one. I haven't been to a national park where I didn't feel like it was worthy of its name. You know what I mean? Just tell people, just get to one if you haven't. But yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
It was great to have you along on the virtual road trip today. Be sure to visit parkcats.com to get your 20% off on your next order of their products. Make sure you follow me on your favorite podcasting platforms so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And I'd ask that you share with your friends and family. Till we catch up again, keep driving and keep having conversation.